What's up, y'all? We here. We're back with a new Free Bounce interview, and we are here with Chuck Sutton, the man, the myth, the legend. You know, Chuck, tell me who you are, where you're from, all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, you know where I'm from. We're from the same place, Montclair, New Jersey.
Yes, sir.
Lived there pretty much my whole life. This has just been my first year out here in LA to do music stuff. But yeah, I guess to describe it, I consider myself like a producer at heart, but I'm an artist, so I kind of like producer myself right now. Um, I love doing sound design. I love performing too. I also both love to dance to our music too.
Yes, sir.
So I feel like my artist projects are just combining my love for making music in Ableton, doing all the weird tips and tricks stuff, like the tutorials and
Mhm.
all the physical movement that comes with like being into the type of music we are.
All right, so I think we could start with a real basic question. Like, who would you say are your influences, your top 3 to 5?
Top 35 is
Yeah,
hard.
we gonna start
It's
right
hard.
there, right there.
You know that game, Katamari, by chance?
No.
It's a video game where you start with this little ball in a room and you start rolling it and it starts picking up the tiny items. It eventually gets so big that it starts picking up the bigger items, and that's how you progress throughout the thing. And that feels like how
Mhm.
like, I could tell you I'm inspired by Diplo and Cruella and Skrillex from that era, but then we get into the next era and I'm inspired by like Monty Booker, Sam G, like
Yeah.
the whole selection crew and Kate Renata and stuff like that. And then we get into like my personal friends, um, Umru, Bickle, Underscores, More Kismet, Ehioribo, Naji. The list goes on in so many directions. So like,
Mhm.
it's almost easier for me to answer inspirations by like boiling down the different categories. And
Mhm.
there's like tons more than what I said, but I feel like sometimes a single line or a single production moment in a song will be inspired purely by one artist, and then the next line will be inspired by someone else. So
So you're just a student of everything. Yes,
try to
sir.
be.
And see, and like that's one thing I really try to stress. Like, free bounce is really like I know people say that bounce is a genre now, right? And like I don't really,
Mentality.
I didn't know that. But I was like, for me, it was just like it's just bounce. It just is. You feel me? Like if you're, it's in
Completely,
yeah. You
completely.
feel me? So like,
Yes.
and I think that you really personify that in your music. So
Cool.
more about that. Like, um, how would you get to crafting your sound the way it is? It's flowy, but also still solid and hidden. You know.
I think that's the music I was listening to. Um, so I started appreciating and like tuning into music through the SoundCloud world. It wasn't like I was listening to soul music, R&B, pop like that. I would hear stuff on the radio, like have on the radio station, whatever, Kanye West, Keisha Cole, whoever's on the radio, I would listen, but um it wasn't my appreciation was for listening to people that I didn't know at the time they were breaking the rules. So like Mr. Carmack, Skrillex, etc. They had real musical backgrounds and they were going on SoundCloud to drop pretty much like the inverted rules. Like what if we take out the bass when you think it's supposed to come in? What if we have jazz chords play over very heavy electronic beats and stuff like that? So I think the reason my style is the way it is because I didn't know they were breaking the rules. I thought that was like the norm. And so I didn't think I was really kind of making music against the current of culture. I thought I was just absorbing like what I saw. And it wasn't until very recently that I was able to realize that. So I think um, anything that was deemed experimental was my home. So whenever I try to make myself feel comfortable within that, I think that's how I was able to get something that's like glitchy, but also just like flows.
No, that's dope. That's really interesting because I remember growing up, like on SoundCloud, all I would see was like Jersey Club. And if it wasn't Jersey Club, it was like Dillip. It was Lucid Monday stuff. You saw,
Exactly, exactly.
and I realized like that it really shapes the way that we. You got the magazine. You got the
I got
magazine.
the magazine right here,
That's
pre-ordered and
clean.
everything.
That's clean. But yeah, like all those people who were making music back then really started to shape a whole new wave of music.
Completely, completely.
So what would you say are some of the things that really made you push your style beyond just being a producer? Because at this point, you do tutorials, you make you make really cool Ableton devices. You make some devices that are kind of visual as well. So what made you get inspired to do more than just producing and more of just that stuff?
Yeah, so um, a lot of people might assume that the art is the final song.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of art that goes into, that moment where you twist a filter and you go, whoa, that has to be in the song. Or you put reverb on something and then maybe you reverse the sound and you go, yo, come over, check this out. Look at that. Why is it doing that? And I think that is how I spend my time with my friends. Like from as early as 2014, I got put in my first Skype group chat. I
Mm-hmm.
had never been in a group chat with strangers before. There's a bunch of kids my age, and they were doing Euro basses and crazy glitchy stuff. And so we would just have fun for hours pre Discord, just hopping on the phone and showing each other our screens and finding some weird way to get the audio through. And we would just get excited to show each other what we were doing. And even though we were doing for fun, it was reinforcing the techniques we were finding out and stuff like that. So I got excited to learn what each audio effect in Ableton did because that means I could show my friend, yo, have you ever tried doing this with this? And then they would do the same for me. So I think me doing that online is just like a public extension of what I do all the time with people close to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like recently in rotation, it's been like sometimes underscores and I have taught Ableton talks like that. She absolutely wows out with that. Kaylin Ellis. Sometimes we just FaceTime each other, just like showing the weird stuff we do in Ableton, and that's almost why I make music is because of my love of that process. So I think anything I do that looks like it's almost separate from the production, usually production is the byproduct of all those things. Like even recently I've been trying to make music that I can dance to the way I like to dance to like dubstep, but the same exact song someone could just groove to without having to think too hard.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of navigating both of those worlds.
I understand that. I understand that for real. For real. So, and that's really dope. Like, what do you think about the? So, what do you think about just the idea of? Do you think that Ableton is a piece that really like changes the way that you make music? Because I've always felt like when I opened up Ableton, it's like every other DAW is like, here's a full plugin. Here's how you use the reverb, all that stuff. Ableton's like, here's the devices that you can use to try to change things yourself. Like Logic doesn't give LFO. I don't know if FL Studio does, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I feel like Ableton is the way it's set up, the way it's created. It really created to give you the full freedom to do what you want. Do you feel like
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
is
I
happening?
would fully agree. I mean, I didn't even know Ableton was a DAW when I downloaded it as a kid. Um, I just looked up a tutorial on how to do vocal chops, and the tutorials were using Ableton. So to me, it was just like, I don't know, have you been just like online as a kid, just looking up random games to play and
Mm-hmm.
random things to do? So it was one of those things where it's like, oh, what's this? I want to learn how to do this. I download it, and then one day I saw the piano and was like, oh my gosh, wait, this is like a music making thing. So I kind of was learning Ableton before I understood the power of it. And then as I kept tunneling through, I started noticing that as my craft started to strengthen, I was able to really get specific with certain moments or create my own devices and effects just built for specific moments. And I don't even save them as a preset. I kind of just try to remember, um, like I like techniques more than devices. You know what I mean?
Understanding
Because
how it
like if you
works.
it's like if you're limited to a plugin and you go to someone's house or a big producer calls you to work and they don't have your plugin, you might be like, what do I do? And in a little bit of an identity crisis of how am I gonna bring my sauce? So I think instead of saving presets over the years, I've always tried to figure out how can I like recreate this on the spot so the information sticks with me. Or if I'm in another DAW, like I can try my best to get the same results or something like that.
Okay, that's great. I know it really is though. It really is. It really is.
I
What
appreciate that.
what do you say are your top five favorite plugins?
Ooh. Top five favorite plugins. We talk when we're not talking Ableton stock, right? We're talking like third
It,
party plugins.
it can be third party, it can be whatever. just say the top five like most impactful plugins that you use. Like you use it like, oh my gosh, I can't go without this. I mean, of course, you're just talking about being able to use without those plugins, right? But what plugins you
Yeah,
know
yeah,
for a
yeah.
fact you really want to use?
Hmm. That's a great question. Let me I think I was actually writing down some plugins like yesterday of things I want to make sure to like incorporate into my new stuff too. Um, what did I write down? So interestingly enough, this is so funny, but okay. I had to boil it down to five.
No, I mean if you want to just talk about it,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
plugins, you can just do
Because
that.
I was gonna say, honestly, I feel like because I just looked at my notes and I actually have like five companies listed with a really good suite of plugins, you know?
Hey, talk
Like,
to him. Talk to him.
so there's Sound Toys. I love Little Alter Boy because it's a pitch shifter, but it doesn't work properly. It does, but it's like sometimes you pitch it down and it'll just randomly make something stereo, or the pitch won't be perfect and it'll start to flutter and do really weird things inside. So it's a really nice way to kind of get some unpredictable results. They also have Decapitator and Little Radiator, and there's a Little Radiator and a Radiator, and they're all just distortion plugins. I think Ableton is really clean and sometimes a little too clean. Where like they've been adding plugins over time that add grit and like add a little bit of analog stuff, but I would say those two distortions really you could take your normal you could put on the master and crank something and it'll start to really do some magic. The Isotope suite, it's usually kind of geared towards engineers and mixing. You know what I mean? Like Neutron, Nectar, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they do have cool stuff like vocal synth and stuff. But um, I've really into Trash 2. I'm into Isotope RX. Um,
Trash is very nice for like the textures.
because it's like it's funny. I was doing videos on their YouTube channel for a while, like tutorials on Isotope, and I couldn't say out loud on their channel that Isotope is the Photoshop or Isotope RX is the Photoshop of audio, because I'd be saying another company name, and I wasn't allowed to do that. But I can. That's why I hesitated. I can say that now. Isotope RX is like Photoshop, where it's like you can make pictures that don't even exist in Photoshop. So it's like um, completely similar with audio. You can create the wildest things. And then they have this thing called Insight.
This
Um,
is also isotope as well.
yeah,
Wow.
Isotope Insight. It's this great visualize. It's like a spectrogram visualizer. Like I know some people on Twitter when they're posting whips and stuff, they end up using, it'll show like the stereo image or like it'll show um, any sort of frequency information. But I use that a lot, not necessarily just to like check when I'm mixing, but I like using it when I'm producing or analyzing sounds to see what frequencies are there and like where I can be adding things or what's going to be redundant and stuff like that, which is really great for layering. Because if you layer like three or more sounds that are all hitting the same frequency range, that's when it gets muddy. But if you understand this one's bringing the high end, this one's bringing the middle end, or the middle frequencies, a plugin like Insight is good at that. Um, then we got Antares with Auto Tune. They got the new vocoder. They got the slicer, and like Auto Tune's obviously goaded. Um, and they have this really cool one called Throat, which you put on a sound, and you change the controls, and it's like a formant shifter, but it's trying to
Oh.
like physically model a throat on top of whatever sound. So you can put on chords, bass, other vocals, and it gives
Oh
this crazy,
wow. See that one? I
yeah.
gotta try that one. That one was crazy. Sounds crazy.
Yeah, and they have a little bit of it in autotune. Like you won't be able to hear it, but on dissonance, I'm using a really subtle formant shifter on my voice the whole time. So it's like dissonance, a cycle I can't escape to. It's like kind of messing with my voice a bit to like get the performance to have like different like
That's really
vocal
cool.
tonalities and stuff. Um, and then XLN. Do you know that company, XLN
Excellent
Audio?
audio.
They
Yep.
do RC20.
Yeah.
They got addictive drums, addictive keys. XO is a crazy plugin for sorting all the samples on your computer. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that one, no. I've seen addictive
So
drums,
you
though. Yeah.
so it shows you a giant cloud of all the samples on your computer, and it's organized. The kicks is red, the snares is pink, and like the hi-hats is yellow, and you can like scroll through an entire cloud of sounds, and it uses AI to figure out like similar sounding sounds next to each other. So if you like a sound but it's not perfect, it'll give you
The
similar sounds
variations.
of your own library that are
That's
going to be
crazy.
unique or similar. Um, and then I guess I use FabFilter Saturn and Pro L,
Oh, yes.
and yeah, and
Do you
then
use
I
the
love to give
presets in
a
Pro?
no. I'm not good at like knowing how to master stuff. So all I do is I just I just throw as many like EQs and multibands like on a sound until it sounds good to my ears, and then when it comes to the final mix, I just try to like turn it as up as I can and then start referencing with other mixes. So for me, I just put Pro L. Um maybe I'll change it to like transparent mode or something like that,
Mm.
and then just get some gain a bit, and then I just try to like make sure my mix is as loud as possible while maintaining the transients because I mix as I produce. So that's like something I'm considering in the process.
Yeah, I noticed. I'm gonna let you keep going, but I noticed with Pro too. Sometimes if you put on the oversample and just really push it, it sounds pretty nice. And then
I don't know if I've messed with the oversample yet, so I got
yeah,
to do that.
like it says like CPU intensive and all that stuff, and you guys click it. I'm like, you
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
what? I'm with it. And then you start to it
You,
adds a little like saturation to it.
okay, sick, sick. I got to check that out. Have you seen that in EQ8?
Mm.
If you right click EQ8 in Ableton, there's a an oversampling thing. So you can raise the high
Oh,
shelf, and instead of just cutting off at the end, it gives you those frequencies that you can't hear. So
see, now you
I
dropping sauce right now. You dropping sauce right now.
hey, like I highly recommend it. I got that tip a while ago. Right click on it and then hit oversampling and then save that as your default EQ8 and you're like good to go.
So that's a thing? Probably more plugins in Ableton where you right click on something and it'll show more options.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I could think of a couple cool ones. Like if you ever have a sampler in or a simpler in Ableton, you can right click and turn it into a sampler, um, or switch it back. Um, and then they also have the one where the new utility, it used to just be either completely mono or completely stereo,
Hmm.
but they have this thing now where it says width and it
Yeah.
goes from 0 to like 400%. You can switch it back by right clicking.
Oh, okay, that's dope. That's dope.
So if you click on it, you could go back to mid-side mode, which is the one that like I prefer. So
Yeah, that's dope. You dropping a lot of sauce right now, bro. That's a lot of sauce right
hey,
now. Right, bro. I mean, that's really all I got. If you have anything that you want to leave for them, what music are you working on, or do you want to share some of that?
it's not done yet. I've made lots and lots of things over the last couple of years, but um I've had an idea of what kind of music I've wanted to put out. And I've spent more time trying to describe it to people than doing it.
Mm.
Sometimes it's daunting to do an idea that you haven't heard around. Like sometimes the reason I make something in Ableton is because I go to Google it on YouTube. Like I look it up on YouTube, like, oh, let me see what someone else did to build this, and there would be no results. And sometimes it's daunting to be like, am I embarking on this journey because I'm actually about to bring something new to the table, or is everyone not doing this because they already know, oh, don't do that, just do this instead? So, fortunately, very recently, I've been making the type of music where I'm like, whoa, this is the stuff that's been somewhere in my mind. I wanted to hear music like this,
Mm.
and so it's finally happening. So, I will be, whenever I have a good batch of songs, that's definitely going to be my next project.
All right, bet. And you as an innovator, as someone who's really paving the way, what do you have to say? Let's leave a small message for any of the producers who see this later on.
Yeah, definitely. Um, it sounds really nerdy, but I think it gets more emotional than that. Just like when you're inspired by something, try to learn the essence of like why it makes you inspired. Don't just try to learn how to recreate it for it. It's a great way to start when you're beginning to recreate things, but it's almost like eating at a restaurant and then like learning about the spices they were using in the dish, and like don't use too much cayenne, use a little bit more paprika, you know what I mean? So I feel like just start learning the traits of like frequency, volume, envelopes. What does reverb sound like on this? Can I identify chorus in a song? What feeling does chorus give me? So that way when you go to produce emotionally or create emotionally, um, it'll be easier to think of everything as building blocks instead of right or wrong. So
Hey, you guys heard it first. Thank you, man, for coming through. And
hey, I appreciate you having me.
we'd love to have you again in the future. The platform we're gonna start streaming soon. We're gonna start doing a lot more beat battles, competitions, all that stuff.
Cool.
So, thank you for coming
Yeah,
by again, bro. And yeah.
definitely.